All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Replace Your Income with Kevin and
Steve. How's it going, Kev?
What's up, man? Hey, so we are in the middle. Well, we are like adjacent to a construction zone.
Yes.
That's so, you guys, we just want to let you know right off the top. If you are listening and you're like, what is that really annoying sort of like droning sound? Well, number one, it's probably me. But number two, it's also the fact that outside of our brand new office, which is still awesome, we're still in the awesome studio, they are doing tile in the hallway that's right to see, like now it's stopped. But so just know, if you hear it, it's not, you're not crazy. It might be coming.
It might
through
be
the
Kevin's
microphone.
stomach grumbling a little bit. I know he hasn't had lunch yet, so
yeah,
he's a little bit hangry.
That's a good point. It could be that. So, oh man, well, we're excited to be with you guys. We got a great topic today. I'm really excited for this one. We're going to talk a little bit about evolution, and we're going to talk about the difference between creation theology and evolution. Is that we're shifting the podcast today, right? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, I think we're going to be talking about real estate.
Okay. No, but we are going to talk about evolution. We're going to talk about the evolution of there's a couple evolutions, right? It's like the evolution of the game plan, how we viewed the game plan from the get-go. When you look at how we started the company, when we first started to work with clients, we were talking about the concept of a game plan. And we're going to talk a little bit about what was the game plan when we started this thing? What does the game plan look like now? And then there's been these other really cool sort of evolutions that's taken place, which has really informed how we've evolved the game plan. And so today it's gonna be meat and potatoes. But this is, I think, really cool. And you know what I love about this topic too is not only is it a bit of a, we did a Back to the Future episode recently, but not only is this like us saying, look, this is where we were and where we are, but what's important is what that means to you as the listener, because I think it's really critical, Steve, and I think that this is true of all businesses. If businesses do not evolve, they die. Imagine, how many of us, Steve, 10, 15, probably 15, close, it might be 20 years ago, how many of us would have thought that we need a device in our pocket that connected us to everyone and everything? And imagine if Steve Jobs was like, I had this idea for this thing called an iPhone, but I don't know, it's not a hard drive, so I'm not going to do it. Where would we be as a world? And so I think that that's really critical that we say, look, evolution is a part of the process in business. It's a part of the process in how we interpret and look at real estate. And that's kind of what we want to dive into today.
Yeah, Kev, if you remember, the first beginnings of a game plan was something that we actually called a napkin presentation.
It was.
It literally was.
It was literally a napkin presentation.
And I would sit down with people over lunch, and I don't know how many new clients I brought into the organization over lunch, literally drawing on a piece of napkin.
Yeah.
This concept, this plan. And when I think back,
describe what you would draw, because it's still there's a document that we send out to our clients called Moneyball Guide, and there is a much more sort of sophisticated version of the napkin presentation in there. But talk about what you would draw and what that would literally look like on a napkin. By the way, I also did napkin presentations, but can I tell you what my preference was? Macaroni grill presentations. Because do you remember when Macaroni Grill, you used to be able to draw on the I would love business meetings there because I could have crayons and I could sketch things out on the table. It was fantastic.
Yes. And then you could tear that piece off and
here you go, take it with you.
Essentially it was like taking a property, right, and putting a purchase price, and then showing here's your down payment, and here's your mortgage payment, and here's your property management fee, and all the different little fees, and then here's what your cash flow is going to be, and then based on a certain appreciation, here's what you could expect in appreciation over the next couple of years. Our time frames back then, Kev, were very short.
It was a lot different
compared to the outlook and the perspective that we have today.
Yes.
And so back then, I'd have these columns. I'd have year one, year 2, 3, all the way through year 10, because we kind of had this 10-year game plan concept.
Right.
And again, this was at the beginning of time.
Yeah.
And so we had this 10-year plan, and we would show, and based on what the market was doing, you literally, if you wanted to, you could turn a home like every 2 years. It was almost like flipping homes.
No, yeah.
Because of what the market was doing, is going up very quickly. And so I'd kind of go through, it's like buy your first one and then show all the detail and collect the cash flow, and now sell it, turn that into 2, and now you got 2 going, and then by like year 5 you had like 4 properties going, right? That was pretty ambitious. But we would show kind of that process of really what it is we do today, but in a very more, call it in its beginning stages of us really getting and understanding like the longer term type of properties. In fact, I think we called it at the time like short term buy and hold.
Yeah.
And it was like, hold it for 1 to 5 years instead of the 5 to 10 years that we do today.
So, okay, in speaking of evolution, so this is just one of those evolutions, like just thinking back to all those memories of the Napkin presentation, kind of where we've been as a company. One of the things that I would say has definitely evolved, and I would say to the listener that it's really critical if you're listening to us, maybe you know us, maybe you work with us, maybe you want to work with us, maybe you just like the real estate content, but you're thinking about trying to find a company that does something similar because for whatever reason, you don't like that I'm bald, whatever it is. What's interesting is there's a lot of companies who will put messaging out like a game plan or like how you could multiply a portfolio sort of over time. And their messaging is designed to do one thing and one thing only, which is to get you to buy, right? They want to sell you something. And I'll be totally honest, when we started the company, we were just trying to figure things out. We were like, well, look, we feel like this is realistic, but it also sounds really good to talk about cash flow and how quickly you could turn a portfolio. If I look at how we've evolved the conversation with our clients over the last 15 years, that evolution has really been born of actual real life success and results, as well as watching the real estate market think about that, dude. We've been literally watching the real estate market every day for the last 2 decades almost. Just consider that. When you think of just the level of information that we've consumed, maybe without even realizing it, just in tracking trends, in watching, because we're constantly making pro formas and property analyses for our clients, because we're constantly evaluating properties, because we're working with clients that want to buy. There is an unbelievable amount of sort of information that has been consumed and then disseminated. But what that's done, Steve, is I feel like that's really helped us evolve the idea of a game plan so that it's not a marketing slogan, but it is a truly realistic and tactical approach to creating economic independence for somebody, regardless of where they are at currently, seeing that there is a pathway to get there. We would love for it to happen tomorrow. For the most part, it's not going to, and we can be really realistic about that. That's been an evolution for us.
Well, look, Kev, it's way more sexy to say, it's like, look what you can do in a few years, as opposed to look what you can do over 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 years, right? But
we live in a fast food society, man. We want it now.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, like if you're listening to or you're hearing or you see promotions for, an opportunity to make, an extraordinary amount of money on a property in a very short period of time, aside from like flipping a property and finding needles in a haystack, but to do, real estate that is predictable, something that you can do over and over and over again, where it's not this anomaly that you happen to find this like incredible deal and it's like, I made $100,000. Something that can work over time. Like when you see some of the messages, it's like, you can do this in 5 years, you can do this in 2 years, whatever the case may be. You might want to just take a look and see how long, that organization has been in business,
right?
How many deals they've actually done, what the results of their clients actually are, what the returns actually have been. Because what's been interesting as we have evolved, and I actually love that word because that is exactly what we have experienced, is even in our marketing reflects the reality of what our clients are experiencing.
Yeah, right.
And so we tend to attract individuals who are like-minded, individuals who understand and can see the benefit and can understand the beauty actually in accumulating and in increasing wealth over time. And when you actually think about it, a 10 to 20 year time frame, Like our clients around that 10 to 15 year time frame, like it's life changing in terms of the finance. Like where else can you do what our clients do in 15 years? Like people will go their entire lives. They'll work somewhere for 30 plus years, 40 years, putting away in a 401k plan, and they won't have nearly what they would have in the, that 10 to 15 years that they can expect when they're investing in real estate the slow and steady way.
I had a conversation the other day that was awesome. You know who you are if you're listening, and because he's listening to all the podcasts. And he's in California, and he works for a like a corrugated box manufacturer, right? And he goes, and his world is produce, and so he goes and he sells effectively. People delivers custom boxes, everything from the way that it looks to the way that it's designed for people to ship or deliver produce. And this is a family company that he's worked for. He's amazing. The guy's awesome. He has this great job. He's got this great company. He's got an amazing family. And one of the things that he said to me the other day was a big reason why he is very interested in working with our company is because the marketing messaging is realistic, and we're saying, look, it's going to take time. And I think that for him, it was like, well, he doesn't really have like a 401k, or he's got some retirement funds, but he's working for a family company. So it's not like he's got this 401k from corporate America that's being matched at 6%, whatever it is. And so he's a young guy too, and he's looking at it and he's going, all right, look, I need 20 years. I need a 20-year game plan. And in that 20 years, I need to be able to shift my financial reality. And I know that if I start with one property today, I can create that course. And I just want to think about, so evolution of the game plan. If you think of what we used to do on the Napkin presentation, which was sort of like one home, a couple years later, you turn it into two, a couple years later, you turn it into four. What was interesting, Steve, is if you look at that market, by the way, was probably really, really similar, except from a lending standpoint, to the market that we're in now, right? Interest rate wise, it was really similar. The amount of appreciation was really similar. There was higher market and consumer confidence because they didn't have all the sort of, PTSD of the last few years of these crashes. But just from an interest rate and an appreciation standpoint in terms of percentage, and it was very, very similar. And we were saying, within a couple years, you could maybe sell one and go get two. Well, today, in this climate and in this environment, obviously it takes quite a bit more to qualify and get an investment piece of real estate today than it did then, right? Like then we were probably in the, I don't know, I'm trying to think of what an average down payment was back in 06, 07 on an investment property.
Like $20,000 to $25,000.
Yeah, probably would have been, because there was 10% loans available, even on a 20% loan, which wasn't necessarily the primary thing we were advocating back then.
Yeah, we're in the low 100s.
Yeah, of purchase price, right? Yeah. And so now you're in the higher 200s to lower 200s or lower 300s, and we're saying, look, we want a 25% down payment, primarily because the lending environment is such that that's what's required, and the kinds of loans that we're using are 30-year fixed, like Fannie, Freddie, conventional mortgages, which weren't the case 15 years ago, and so we're a lot more realistic. But what we're saying today is, even in the appreciation environment, even in the interest rate environment, we're not telling anybody that you ought to be able to bank on that property being sold or even refinanced within the next, 2 years. We're saying, look, you probably should plan on at least 5 years, maybe as much as 7, for one property to be able to become 2. Now, in the event that interest rates go down, you could refinance, cash out, or the market is such that you've got enough appreciation that there's something that could, shake loose. Fantastic. But what I think the reason why I draw that point is, back then, even in a similar interest rate environment, even in a similar appreciation environment, granted prices were lower, we were a little bit more aggressive in terms of what we thought people could potentially achieve. Now we're 15 years later, and we're talking from a standpoint of what we know people can achieve. For us, it's no longer it's not like theory anymore. Right now, this is real life, tons of scientific, quantitative proof that this is what's real.
No, exactly. And so that's been, for me anyways, that's been one of the funnest parts of what it is that we do, is to have gone from theory to practical reality, where it's like, this is what our clients have experienced. It's what we have experienced. And so when you take a look at the game plan itself, we've actually evolved the documents that we use to purchase properties. We've changed the terminology. We've coined some terms ourselves to help our clients, better understand like what is going on behind the scenes to create these phenomenal opportunities for them in the real estate investing world. And so maybe walk us through, Kev. I know that, we started out with what we called a pro forma.
Yeah.
We had certain terms and we'd show certain things in a certain length of time. And just recently we went through a massive evolutionary, progression this last year. It took a little bit of time. It took about 18 months to go through the process. But we really took our pro forma, we renamed it, and did some pretty amazing things. And you were right in the smack middle of this.
Yeah.
And so maybe share with us kind of that experience and what happened with that.
Well, yeah, I will totally do that. But before I go there, I just want to talk a little bit about even the term game plan, right? Even just defining that. So if you look at like kind of where we started things, the idea was the game plan was supposed to give you, it was going to be like gazing into the crystal ball, like over the next 10 years, this is for sure what you're going to accomplish, right? And that's kind of what people expected. It was like we would say a game plan and they'd be like, well, you're going to pull out the tarot cards and you're going to like read me my future. And to a certain extent, I think that's what we thought we were able to do. Even if you look at how the game plan has evolved. Now, here's what a game plan is today. A game plan is a property-based game plan, and you stack properties in order to achieve results, right? It's micro wins to millions. It's exactly what our book is called, right? That and what's interesting about it, I love me some sports analogies, and there is this amazing Netflix series called Quarterback. Have you heard of this thing?
No.
Guys, if you're watching it, if you're listening, go watch Quarterback. Even if you don't like football, pretend you do. It's amazing. So Quarterback follows, last season, it follows 3 quarterbacks and sort of what their season looked like, right? There's a guy that's the Atlanta Falcons quarterback who kind of loses his job midseason. That's not a spoiler alert because if you watch football, you know that happened. There's a guy who's the Minnesota Vikings quarterback, Kirk Cousins, who is a great quarterback, but you can kind of see they kind of had the best record in the NFL last year, and then they weren't able to materialize what they wanted. And then you also get to see probably the most captivating player in all of football right now, probably the best player in football today, which is Patrick Mahomes, who's the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback. And you get to watch kind of their behind the scenes lives and how they work with the coaches. But one of the things that's interesting is like if you think of football, there's this whole episode on the mental requirements of being a quarterback and a football player. And it's so funny. They even make the point. It's like, you watch like, I don't know, Varsity Blues or like one of these football movies and the offensive lineman is like so stupid. He could barely like tie his shoes and he's supposed to be a football player. But dude, football players have to be brilliant. When you think of the NFL playbook and all of the audibles and all of the variations, and they go through this section where they talk about how they call plays. I mean, it is all gibberish. It's amazing. But here's the point. I kind of got the feel as going into each of these games, as you're kind of watching these quarterbacks and them preparing with their team, there is a game plan for the game, right? That's the idea. What is the plan for the game? But listen, the game plan may just be we're gonna focus on our run game and less on our pass game. Or maybe for a different team, it's we're going to focus more on our passing game and less on the run game. Or maybe for another team, it's the defense is going to blitz more often because they feel like the opposing team's offensive line is going to succumb and maybe the quarterback will sort of buckle in pressure. But what's interesting is the game plan for all of these teams is to win the Super Bowl. That's the game plan. At the start of the year, it's to win the Super Bowl. But then you break that down inside of each individual game, and the game plan is we're going to focus on this aspect of our team. We're going to try to be perfect in this aspect in order to get this win. But even inside of that, there's opportunities where you're late in the clock, right? You're in the 2-minute drill at the end of the half, and you want to make sure you put points on the board before you go into the half, or maybe you're at the end of the game. Like there's this one really, I don't know if anybody remembers this game, but the Minnesota Vikings they were down like 34-0 at halftime, and they mount the most incredible what's that word?
Comeback.
Comeback, thank you. Comeback in NFL history. And you get to see the behind the scenes of what was going on. And what was interesting is they went into the half and they weren't trying to win the game. They still knew that their goal was a Super Bowl. So what they were trying to do was set themselves up for the next game. The idea was come out after halftime and just put points on the board. We just don't want to get shut out, right? So the game plan, the long-term game plan was still win the Super Bowl. The short-term game plan, they kind of gave up on the idea that they could win the game. So the game plan shifted again, and it was like, let's put points on the board. Now, inside of every single offensive series, the game plan changed again. Now, what I love about that concept is real estate is not different than that. The goal, the game plan.
Wait. Finish the story. So did they win?
They win. They win.
That's
they
awesome.
literally win. They mount the largest comeback in all of NFL history. And you watch this thing. I think the final score, I can't remember. I think like the opposing team gets like, I don't know, maybe a field goal in the second half. And the Vikings, they end up winning like at the end with a field goal. Like it is unbelievable. I actually think I was traveling when that game was played, and I think I watched it in a hotel, and I was like, what is happening? So then to watch it on Netflix was crazy, right? But I was just watching it, and I was thinking about us. I was thinking about our clients. This is how consuming our real estate world is, Steve.
Exactly.
I'm watching a Netflix series about quarterbacks, and I'm thinking about you as the listener, right? It's like and I'm going, oh my goodness. For our clients who used to think, like we used to even say, the game plan is you're going to get 10 properties in 10 years, and we even used to say, do you remember? The goal was to make you a millionaire in 10 years. Do you remember? We used to say that, right? And now the game plan is, the goal is economic independence. Now, what's interesting about economic independence is that may be total income replacement. That may be partial income replacement. Even when we started this podcast, Replace Your Income, the idea was total income replacement with real estate. Now, you and I know there are multiple clients who have completely replaced their income with real estate. There are some who've used real estate as a supplement, but has still been able to achieve some level of economic independence, whatever that looks like. Economic independence for us, ideally, is 10 homes.
Well, and the key there, the term economic independence is so different for every single person, right?
Yeah.
So each game plan is so individual because we all have different individual needs, depending on where we live in the country, depending on what our lifestyle is. We have some people, their lifestyle is just super simple.
Right.
Like economic independence could be one property.
Oh, yeah. Can I tell you a story about that?
Yes.
I don't know if I've ever told this on the podcast. We were doing an event. It was at our I'm thinking of all the offices we've been in. Thankfully, we're not moving again. We are here. But I think this was in the first main office that we all worked in together. Because before that, we'd work in like separate offices, right? When we started the company. So that you know what building I'm talking about. So we were doing like a lunch presentation or something that we had clients in the office. And I remember a guy coming up to me and telling me something that just throttled me, okay? Here was a guy who had money in an IRA that we had encouraged to maybe potentially look at self-directing that IRA, okay? Now, he was not a wealthy guy. He was not interested in millions. He was not interested in thousands. He was interested in one thing. That's it. All he wanted, okay? He was at retirement age already. All he wanted is to feel, this was economic independence for him. He wanted to feel like in any given month, he could buy a ticket to visit his grandkids. That was independence for him. Social Security or whatever else he had going on met his needs. He didn't need any more than that. But what he didn't have is he didn't have enough to feel like he could go and visit his grandkids whenever he wanted. So he self-directs those funds. He buys one property cash inside the self-directed IRA. It now generates hundreds of dollars a month, more than enough to buy a round-trip plane ticket any month he wants. He was free. That's all he wanted. And I've never forgot that story because to me it was such a compelling example of what a game plan should be. And here's again, so if like the series quarterback, the goal is to win the Super Bowl. We know what the long-term goal is. And by the way, you look at every NFL team, the long-term goal is always to win the Super Bowl. The Cleveland Browns have never won one. Do you think that changes their goal? No, the goal is to win the Super Bowl. But inside of every season, there is we want to be a winning team this season and hopefully go to the Super Bowl. But even inside of that, it's we hope to win our division or whatever it is. And inside of a game, it's we hope to win the game. Maybe like that Vikings game, we hope to put points on the board. Maybe inside of a series of downs, it's we hope to get a first down on this 3rd and long, whatever it is. And the game plan changes throughout that process.
And for some of these teams, right, it's not to win the Super Bowl this season.
Right.
It's we're building right now, and in 5 seasons, we feel like we've got a real shot at it. And it's the same
100%.
thing.
And so why I love this for real estate is if you're listening and you're wondering what your game plan is, here's the deal. The number that's going to represent economic independence for you, Steve and I are big believers that you ought to own 10 homes. Here's the deal. If your goal, if your Super Bowl is 10 homes. Now, for some of you, those 10 homes are going to more than replace all of your income. For some of you, those 10 homes are going to replace a portion of your income. But we have a very strong belief that if you can get to 10 properties over time, right? This would be a slow evolutionary process. One property, hang on to it, and maybe that one becomes 2. If you start to like how real estate feels and you have a good job and you can contribute and save additional dollars, or you've got retirement funds that you start to, knock the dust off and bring out into the playing field to go deploy into real estate, whatever that plan is. If you can look at it and say, I know I want to get to 10, and I know that when I get to 10, I'm going to own millions of dollars of real estate. I'm going to be generating tens of thousands of dollars of at least gross income from my properties, depending on what, if you're leveraged or not. I don't know what your cash flow is going to be, but if that's the goal, now you zoom back in and you go, what's my game plan right now? Your game plan right now should be to acquire your next property. Regardless of if you own properties, you should be saying, how do I take these properties and go buy one more? If you don't own a property, the game plan should be, how do I get my first property? And then once you have a property in your grasp, this is where I'm going to now finally circle back to what you wanted me to talk about. This is where the property analysis becomes critical, because even each property, there is a game plan for that property. And the game plan for that property is plan on owning it for 10 years. In the event that you own it less than that, awesome. But plan on 10 years. There's your game plan. Now, what's the game plan in every given year? Well, one year, it may be a heavy cash flow year. And then the second year, it may be a heavy repair year and less cash flow, right? So, because that can just happen. So the idea is, if you look at the property analysis, and this is what we did, is we kind of explored what the property analysis was from our pro forma. So the pro forma that we used to have used to really just highlight a few numbers that to me, I didn't think were necessarily the most relevant anymore. And I know that's kind of how we all felt, but that was something that became more and more clear to me. It was talking about percentage return, which is great. It was talking about cash flow, which is great. And it had these ideas, these numbers that were all really good. Our old pro forma was awesome. And each property's game plan was only 5 years on our pro forma. Well, we started, as we've evolved and understood more and more of what this can represent for our clients, we went, well, hold on. 5 years is not a guarantee. It may be less than that, but it certainly could be more than that. So we need to make a 10-year pro forma, something that we now call property analysis. The other part of the process, Steve, was I know this was really critical for me, and I know as a team we talked about this. If I look at any given property and any given game plan for that property, there is, for me, a handful of numbers that are more important than all the other numbers. Those numbers that we think are the most critical to everybody's individual game plan inside of any individual property are now at the top, highlighted and featured on our property analysis. And this is, I like to call it the magic number. And we talk about this in the book too. And here's the idea. How much money goes in and how much money comes out after 10 years? If you look at every single metric that we can measure and every other sort of number and calculation and percentage and all, at the end of the day, it's dollars, man. It's dollars in and it's dollars out. And if you're going to pull out more dollars than you put in, it's probably a good investment. And so what we show right at the top of the property analysis is total out of pocket, not just down payment, total out of pocket. What is it going to be for your down payment and for your closing costs and even some of your prepaid items and some potential rehab expenses and our team's fee? Like, what are your total expenses going to be? And then after 10 years, what is the check you could walk home with? 2 checks, right? We show 2 numbers. We show one, which is total profit at net all expenses. The other one is what you'd walk away from the closing table with, which is a higher number because you're going to be getting some of your down payment back when you go and sell that property. So we show money in, total like net profit, and then minus everything, and then what you're at, the check you're walking home with. Then the next set of numbers are some percentages and some dollars. I don't even care about the percentages right now because there's like annualized, sort of returns, which are great. They're way better than what you're probably going to find in any sort of S&P 500 or whatever your choice.
Well, Kev, the other thing that I really like about the property analysis, and I think you kind of touched on this, we renamed it the property analysis from property pro forma.
Right.
One of the things that I absolutely love about this is it helps us and it helps our clients see the bigger picture, because so often we get caught up in, okay, what's this property going to do for me day one?
Right.
And the way that we've set up the numbers now is it really focuses on what is this property going to do for me over the course of 10 years.
Totally.
And that is absolutely key, because when you get caught up in today, you often will make a bad decision and you'll pass up on an opportunity that will be life-changing from a financial perspective. So one small example, right, is net monthly cash flow.
Yeah.
That day one, month one,
right,
monthly cash flow, it's like, well, I'm going to invest $85,000 and I'm going to get a return of $125. It's like, yeah, woohoo. So you got to look at the bigger picture. But even on that net monthly cash flow, when you take the average over the course of 10 years, the average net monthly cash flow will probably show something significantly higher.
Yeah. The other thing that we did on these analyses that I love is right at the top, we put another number. We've talked about it on the podcast, but I think it is so critical. And the number is something we call average monthly income.
I love that number.
This number
it's my favorite
says
number.
If you were to take the total profit on the property over 10 years and divide it by 120 months, or approximately 12 months a year for 10 years, right?
Years.
What would that represent? Because that in reality is what that property is generating for you. It may not be all spendable milk money, right? But it is real dollars that represents real increases, average monthly increase. That is what that number is representing. What am I increasing on average over the time of owning this property? And there it is right there at the top. The other thing that I really like that we do, because again, we know the game plan. We want to own 10 properties. We want to have some level of income replacement.
Well, Kev, just really quick. I mean, in terms of your analogy of the football, right? If you measured the success of your game on one down, and you did a handoff and he ran for a loss. He got tackled behind the line of scrimmage, right? It's like, and you make the decision of whether this was a good game or not based on that one down, you're going to make a bad decision.
Dude,
but when you take a look at that bigger picture, right?
No, that's such a great analogy, because sometimes that's what we do with cash flow.
That's exactly what we do.
Cash flow is a running play sometimes where we only get a yard, right? But you know what's interesting is some of the best rushers in history, sometimes if you look at the best rushers in the NFL, their average yards per carry is 2-3 yards per carry. They have a couple that break loose. They have some where they're tackled for a loss. But what's interesting is if you were to do what you just said, right? You judge your entire team's ability, capabilities, and likelihood of getting to the Super Bowl off one run play where you're tackled for a loss, you would never play football again. You would quit the team. You'd sell the team. No, why would we do it?
In fact, you might not even show up for the game if you thought that's is all you were going to get.
It's so true. And so on this property analysis, we're trying to say, let's analyze the whole game, right? Let's look at how many yards from scrimmage we were able to get and how many, passing yards and how many running yards and we're looking at all of the numbers. And there's a couple of the numbers on the analysis that are so critical, like money in, money out, like average monthly increase, but also another, like the average cash flow over a 10-year time frame in terms of net cash flow. The other thing we did that personally I just love is we always talk about the benefits, the monetary or financial benefits of owning real estate that are sometimes not quantified, but that have a quantification, meaning principal pay down, depreciation, some aspects like that. When you look at the average annual sort of monthly increase, you're taking into account appreciation, but we have another number in there that's saying if you just look at cash flow plus principal pay down plus potential tax benefits, what is that number? What does that represent? And it is hundreds of dollars a month, even with appreciation out of the equation. Now you're judging the game the right way. You're able to look at the play and put it into context. And so this, I think, is what Steve and I would like for everybody listening to realize, is that your game plan, we know what the long-term game plan is, but your game plan is going to go in phases. And your game plan today, right now, your game plan should be get my next property as quickly as possible. And then when you get that property in front of you and you're looking at a property analysis, either by us or somebody else, your game plan analysis your property analysis should look at it and realize that you need to take multiple things into consideration. And that game plan may change month to month, year to year, but it's all part of the larger picture. And that, I think, Steve, is the true evolution of the game plan for our company. It's not about saying you have to get to 1 million, and it's not about saying you have to do it in 10. It's about saying we know that 10 properties will represent some form of economic independence, and we are going to get there as quick as we can, but there are going to be many things that happen along the way, and we need to look at them in isolation, year by year, maybe even month by month, and evaluate and reevaluate, just like they do on quarterback, just like they do in that Netflix series, just like they do in an NFL game. And if we can view our game plan, and we can view our real estate portfolio, and we can view our financial lives in those terms, now the game plan becomes an ever-living, breathing document or ever-living, breathing sort of approach that helps us kind of have a North Star. And that's really the key. And if we know that North Star, we know where our next step needs to be. And that's really what the game plan has become. So
yeah, I love it. I just got one thing to say, Ken.
Yeah.
I think we need our own Netflix series called Done For You Real Estate.
Okay. Let's do it.
And instead of us using sports analogies, like the sports guys, we'll use the DFY real estate analogy to help them understand the football game a little bit better. And help them understand. It's like, you guys, it's just like buying one property at a time. Just replace your income one property at a time. It's like one play, you guys.
Yeah. I would love to watch Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid use DFY terminology.
It would be fantastic. It would be fantastic.
Oh, that's a good way to end the episode. All right, you guys. Thank you so much. Keep tuning in. Follow us on the socials. If you have not been subscribing to our YouTube channel, go do it right now. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, go do it right now. If you haven't left us a review on the podcast, go do that right now. And the appropriate number of stars is 5. But really, subscribe, follow us on the socials, give us a review. We love you. We're thankful for you, and we're thankful we could come to this episode. The evolution of a game plan is now complete, Steve.
Have a good one.